Hello, I'm Liam, and in this video I show how to repot and revive aloe vera plants. On this channel I usually produce videos about how to grow fruit and vegetables, but now it's the start of autumn, the weather's getting a little colder, and it's time to get on with some of the indoor jobs that I've been putting off, starting with the aloe vera plants. If you have aloe vera plants that look like this, I just reach and bring this one into view here. Now this aloe vera plant is really quite green, but the main leader has grown too large for the pot, and there are a number of offsets or baby aloe vera plants that can be repotted. Or perhaps you have an aloe vera plant that looks more like this one here. This one here is in really quite poor condition. This plant is looking the way it is because I've neglected to water it for far too long. The leaves look dehydrated because it is, and they've also changed colour too. It does have a number of offsets on it, but these may not be the best offsets to use to repot. But I'll divide the plant and take a look. And then I have this plant over here, which overall I think is in much better condition. Each of the aloe vera plants, the offsets and the original plant, look as though they've got quite a good colour to them. And I'm hopeful that the offsets I replant from this pot will actually look quite good. And by the end of the video, I'll show how to end up with plants that look like this. And once they're repotted in this way, they'll require very little care and attention over the next couple of years. I'll also talk about where to position the plants for the best growth and what care and attention they do need. So let's get started. Before starting the job of reviving and repotting my aloe vera plants, I'll cover what I'm using to do the job. Now, aloe vera are a heat-loving plant. I was once given a gift of aloe vera plants from Spain, and unfortunately I killed them, so I learnt the hard way of how to take care of them. They do grow in soil, but they like really dry conditions, and that's important to bear in mind when repotting them. I think there are two good ways of doing this. The first way is to use a pot like this, and inside that pot have the pot that the aloe vera will actually be growing in. The important thing about this pot is that it's got plenty of holes, drainage holes in the bottom, because the key thing is that aloe vera plants really don't like to sit in damp soil that can rot the roots. I'll cover how to water aloe vera plants later in the video. Plastic pots like this are relatively cheap, but the thing with using plastic pots is that you need to stand them in containers, and containers like this aren't so cheap. And if you've got many aloe vera offsets, then purchasing containers can be relatively expensive. The other disadvantage with plastic pots is that although they've got plenty of drainage holes in the bottom, they don't allow water to evaporate through the sides. And because of that, they can be relatively moist. And as I previously said, that's not so good for aloe vera plants. Therefore, what I prefer to use are terracotta pots. And I've got some terracotta pots just here. This terracotta pot has one drainage hole in the bottom, and that's really common. The great thing about terracotta pots is that the pots themselves are porous, which means that they absorb water, and that means the water evaporates, stopping the soil inside being too moist. Ideal conditions for aloe vera plants. The terracotta pots themselves will also need a tray to stand on. It's a matter of personal taste, but I actually think that looks quite pretty. And it's a much cheaper option than purchasing many of these containers. In addition to the pots, I've also thought about the growing media I'll be using. The good thing about aloe vera is that they will grow in normal garden compost. I'm using shop-bought compost because that way it won't contain any weeds. But to help with drainage, I'll be mixing in this grit. I purchased a bag of grits from a garden centre, and the advantage of using the grit and mixing it into the compost is that when I water it, the compost will be wet, but by using the grit, the drainage will be much better. And that means that the aloe vera plants won't be standing in wet compost. As I'm going to be repotting several aloe vera plants, I'm going to prepare the growing media in advance and mix it all together in this big bucket. That way it'll be quicker. I'm not going to be too precise about how much of the compost I put in proportion to the grit. I'm just going to mix in the grit that I have to improve the drainage. I'll start by a few handfuls of the compost. There we go. This compost is relatively dry. Usually when repotting I like to wet the compost before I add it to the pots, but because aloe vera like a dry soil, I'm not going to do that this time. I'm actually going to water the plants after I've repotted them. And now I'm going to pour in the grit. There we go, that's a good quantity. And mix it all together. This is looking good. The grit is nicely mixed into the compost. And as I move it in my gloves, it's not sticking together, which is a good sign. I'm now going to break apart the aloe vera plant to separate out the offsets. I'm going to gently tap the plant pot to help release it. The roots are growing through the bottom, so I think the plant is likely to be pot bound. Might need some persuasion. And there we go. The tangle of roots is really clear to see there. It certainly needs repotting for that reason alone. There are two ways to separate the plants. One way is quite common, is to simply pull the plants apart. The way I prefer to do it is to use a sharp knife to cut through the roots. I find that I have less accidental damages that way, and that's what I'm going to do now. I've got a little saw here, but a sharp kitchen knife would also do the job. Right, I think I've separated that plant. I need to do that a little more. There we go. That's the first plant separated. And I've got some nice green leaves there and plenty of roots still left on the plant. I think that's a good one. Now let's do the others. One more. Oh, they're coming apart a little easier now. Oh, that looks like one, but it's actually two. I'll try and cut that apart now. They're falling apart quite easily. Wow, there we go. So in total, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7 aloe vera plants just from one pot. What I'm now going to do is to select the best aloe vera plants and pot it up. From what I can see, I think these two are the best ones. I really like the fan shape of this one and the colour of the leaves. I think that looks really healthy. And I think this one is looking pretty good too. The first step is to fill the pot with the growing media. I'm patting it down just to make sure that there aren't any air gaps. That's probably enough there. I want a good inch or 3 centimetres at the top of the pot, which will be useful when I come to water it later. Then all I do is to get the plant and put it in the hole, trying to keep it as vertical as possible by pressing in the compost around the roots. As I pressed it down there, the growing media's got a little more compacted, so I'm going to add a little more in. And there we go, that's the first one done. This plant here is really too big for its pot. I'm expecting it to be quite root bound when I lift it out. Firstly, taking the inner pot out of its container, gently banging the pot to help loosen it. There are lots of roots coming out of the bottom of the pot, so it's probably quite pot bound. Oh yes. And lots of roots there. It really is quite tangled. I can feel how dry that compost is. And what I'm going to do is use this saw to cut into the roots to try and make separating the plants that little bit easier. Oh yeah, This one's coming apart quite nicely. That's the first one separated. The second one, that's got quite a good shape to it, I think. This one here, it's really big, but I'm not sure if I like that length of white stem. I think that's a little bit leggy. I may not pot this one up. But this one here, I think that's looking really good. So let's think about this. I think I'm going to do that one, and I'm going to do this one. But this one here, I'm not very keen on the colour of the leaves. That's quite yellow and a little bit soft to the touch. I may stick with two plants to repot from that container, these two here. I think these pots are a really good size. From memory, it's about 15 centimetres across and maybe the same height, maybe a couple of centimetres higher. I'm going to start by filling it with compost. I'm leaving an inch gap at the top. That inch gap at the top, about 3 centimetres, is to help with watering. I'm going to create this hole in the middle and simply drop the plant in. I'll look at all the roots on this one. Oh, they don't actually all belong to the plant. There we go. Lots and lots of roots. I'm going to put those in the hole. Try and bury those roots. And as I put the plant in, I'm putting it in quite deeply and trying to keep it straight, and then pressing the compost around the plant to keep it upright. As I push down, I'll need to add some more compost. Giving that a good press down there. I like the look of this one. I think it's looking really good. I've got some brown, old brown parts that I think they're old leaves that I'll just prise away. It will make the plant look that little bit prettier. I think that one's looking really good. That's the first 5 aloe vera plants repotted, and I've got plenty more to do. But I'm going to stop now and water these plants. The important things with watering aloe vera plants is that the water is allowed to drain through the compost, so the compost doesn't end up too moist. The pots should be removed from their trays to allow the water to drain away. Now in winter the plants don't need much watering anyway, but if they do need some water, then the pots can be stood in a bath or a shower tray. But on a warm day like today, I'm going to stand these pots on bricks, and that way the water will be able to drain away naturally. So let's do that now. I'm going to fill the pots with water right up to the top and then allow them to drain. About 10 minutes should be enough. As I pour the water, it should be possible to see that the terracotta pots change colour. They'll deepen in colour as the pots start to absorb the water. As the water's draining away, I'll just remove the end of this leaf here that's looking a little brown. And then this one here too, just to tidy it up a little bit. And that's it, that's 10 minutes gone. And if I move an empty pot next to one of the full pots, it should be possible to see the difference in colour between the one with the plant in and the empty pot. The empty pot being that much lighter. And that, I think, is one of the most helpful things about terracotta, because if the terracotta pot looks dark, then there's still plenty of moisture in the pot and also in the soil, and therefore the aloe vera plants won't need watering. Whilst if the pot is like this, a really kind of bright orange colour, then the soil inside may be dry too, and the aloe vera may need some water. And this is how it's going. I'm really happy with how this is turning out. 9 new plants compared to the 3 overgrown and tired looking plants I started with. In terms of location for aloe vera plants, a sunny windowsill is ideal. A south-facing window where the plant receives sun all day may be too hot for an aloe vera plant. The effect of the glass may mean that the leaves become scorched and brown. If the plants are receiving too much sun, the leaves will show it. An easy solution is to move the plants further away from the window, perhaps on a bookshelf or tabletop. And that's it. That's my video on how to revive and repot aloe vera plants. I hope you found the video useful, and if you did, please let me know by hitting the like button or leaving a comment. And for more videos like this, please subscribe to my YouTube channel in the usual way. Now I need to get on and repot the rest of my aloe vera plants.